My name is Sam, and I would like to preface this with it's gonna sound really cheesy because bodybuilding not only is my life, it saved my life in a lot of ways. I think that my story starts long before I started training or working out in the gym or prioritizing my health or anything that I do now. I can trace it all the way back to I had my daughter at a very young age. I was 16 when she was born. I was on top of it, and I did I did take correspondence in night classes to be able to graduate before I turned 17, and immediately went to college. My first degree was in forensic science and human physiology and anatomy. I have a very strong biology background. And then after I finished my first degree, I was in a little bit of limbo where I had started graduate school, but I was already working multiple jobs, like 2 to 3 jobs at a time to be able to support myself and my daughter. I ended up bartending, and I loved that. It's great to have cash in hand. You know, it's fun. Work never goes home with you. It's easy money all over the place, right? So instead of finishing graduate school, I did start to get sucked into the bar scene a little bit. And I mostly chalk it up to I never really got to be a teenager. I never got to experience prom or walk with my class at graduation. There just there wasn't time being a teen mom. And then in my early 20s, I was 22 um, at work and was like all of a sudden just doubled over in pain. Like I couldn't stand up straight. My lower back was on fire anytime that I tried to move. Um, I went to the doctor. They ran labs, they ran blood tests. Eventually ended up doing an ultrasound near my kidneys, thinking that maybe it was kidney stones, and instead found a tumor on one of my ovaries. So at 22, I went through treatments for cancer. And after being told that the cancer had been removed, I had multiple laparoscopic surgeries to remove tumors. And after being told that it was in remission, instead of taking that as a sign, I turned it into YOLO. I got buried into this community of bartenders and servers and the nightclub and nightlife industry, and started drinking a lot. I drank a lot. Like every single night, I was drinking at work. I was drinking before I went to work. There were nights when I was closing up the bar that I couldn't even count down my drawer. I would just throw money in my bucket and be like, this is a tomorrow problem. I irresponsibly cannot say how many nights I don't remember getting home. it got to a point where it wasn't only alcohol. There was a lot of cocaine in the bar industry, and when I started feeling too drunk, I'd be like, "Oh, just a little bit of an upper, so we can keep going." I have slept in my car. I have slept in the booth at one of the clubs that I worked at. I definitely went off the deep end, but so did everybody else that I worked with. It's just what we did every night was a party. Every night we were drinking until the sun came up. We were, having a hair of the dog in the morning before our next shift to get it together. And there were 2 times that I can really think of. There was one night, I couldn't tell you honestly what I was doing. Somehow managed to fall in my garage and split my leg open from my shin across my calf to the point where my muscle was coming out. I know this only because my sister took me to the hospital. I woke up in the hospital with no recollection of what had happened or how I got there, and thought like, maybe this is a good time for me to start to pull it back a little bit, like maybe not quit drinking entirely, but just tone it down so that I'm not blacking out every other day. And I was pretty good about that for a while. I was good about that. I really, after waking up in the hospital like that, having no recollection what happens, there's other things I can think of where I know I hurt people very close to me and have no recollection of things that were done or said. There was one night where I was the responsible driver for my friend's birthday, and I drove everybody home after dinner. I had 2 drinks at dinner, and on my way home, I swerved off the road to miss a car that was coming directly at me. Car was in the wrong lane. I swerved. I rolled my truck. I called the police because I had been in an accident. The other driver took off. And when the police showed up, they asked me if I had been drinking, and I was honest. And I said that I had had a couple of drinks at dinner. I did the roadside test. I failed the roadside test. I was asked to do a breathalyzer, and I blew a .09. So I was just barely over the legal limit in Colorado. But they threw the book at me. And in hindsight, I'm very glad that they did, because had these things not have happened, I wouldn't have taken control of my life. I wouldn't have made the changes that I did. I wouldn't be who I am, where I am, or what I am now. I was without a vehicle for 6 months entirely, not able to drive myself anywhere. I had a breathalyzer, like a blow to start, in my truck for another 2 years after that. Of course, if anybody has had a DUI, you know how time consuming and expensive it is. But it was that next morning where I was so low. I was so depressed. I was like, all right, this is it. This is like, I am done. I am done with this. Not like social drinking. I'm not having any drinks with friends. I can't do this anymore. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I weighed over 200 pounds on a 5'5" frame. That's a lot of weight to carry. And I needed something. I needed something that was controllable when I couldn't drive. I had probation meetings every week. I felt like I had no control over my life. And I needed something. I needed something to put my energy into that wasn't alcohol, that wasn't drugs. And I decided that, I'm gonna try to start losing some weight. I want to feel, happy when I look in the mirror again. I want to feel more comfortable in my body. And I didn't know where to start really. Um, I had some dumbbells in my garage, like that went up to 20 pounds. I had a pull-up bar. I had a couple resistance bands and an old set of P90X videos. So this is where I started because I was so embarrassed that I had let myself get to that point where I was so overweight that like there's no way I can go to a gym like this. There's no way I can step foot in the gym when I have no idea what I'm doing, when I look the way that I do. So for 6 months, I worked out in my garage. I followed the little menu that was laid out from the P90X program. I started making some changes and I lost about 40 pounds in the first 6 months. And then I decided to join a 24-hour fitness. And I started doing, some of the group classes, some of the like spin classes, just things like that, like different ways to push myself and challenge myself while feeling a little bit more comfortable with weight training. I continued to lose weight and my physique started, to lean out. I was starting to put on some muscle and still bartending at that point in time, sober, which is not easy to do. If you know the peer pressure that comes along with the service industry, as understanding as they can be, it was definitely a struggle for the first few months that I said no to going out. I said no to drinking. I said no to everything that everyone else was doing. Um, so I was fortunate enough that in the club that I worked at, there was a couple of the bouncers there that were into powerlifting. And they look great. They look like bodybuilders, right? And one of them invited me one day to come train with them. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. It's like there's, to have people who are, have some interest other than drinking. Uh, I got very, very into this idea and then started being able to move more weight. And it was just like, I felt so good finally having control over something and something that was so positive for my mindset and my self-image and ultimately my health. And eventually, after a year or so of this, someone approached me at our gym. It was like I said, a 24-hour fitness in Colorado, and asked me if I had ever thought about competing. And at that point, I was like, absolutely not. Like standing on a stage to be judged in a bikini was not something that 210-pound me thought was ever achievable. But I eventually got the confidence to do it. And I did my first show in 2013. I actually did 2 shows that year and I was hooked immediately. It's like the idea of being able to push your body to this place, like push it to your mental and physical limits. I was all in. And I loved every single part of it. Every single part of me wanted to continue to get better. Unfortunately, I worked with somebody and I'm regardless forever grateful because he introduced me to what I do now. And reverse dieting, and maybe it was just that time frame as well. Reverse dieting wasn't really a thing that people talked about. I had dieted at very low calories. I was very, doing loads of cardio and training, and I spent probably 3 hours a day in the gym, 3 to 4 hours a day in the gym. And coming out of competition, I just went back to how I had been eating before I went into contest prep, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good. And rapidly gained weight back, which put me back into this like feeling like crap about myself and not knowing what to do or how to get better. And eventually, I was introduced to my now boss, Adam, with Team Elite Physique, who helped me to correct my metabolism and put me on a path that was a little bit more directed, more science driven. And I'm super, super into the science side of this sport and just health and nutrition in general. Um, it did take about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, to finally get to a place where I was able to consistently eat 1,400 calories a day without gaining weight. Um, and from there, it continued to get better, faster. But it was that really inspired me to do a deeper dive into dietetics and nutrition and have a better understanding from a nutritional standpoint of how the body works and how our hormones coincide with that. So at that point, I did go back to school again, and not for my master's degree. I actually started a second degree in exercise science and dietetics. And after completing that, I got my NASM certification, and I started shadowing Adam in the nutrition office, having the opportunity to learn from him and also from Tori Wright uh, on how to better help people get better, be it through transformation or contest prep. And after a couple years of doing that, I was able to start taking my own transformation clients. And it fueled my soul to be able to help people like this, to be able to apply my knowledge and just my own previous experiences through transformation and weight loss to be able to help other people do the same thing. Eventually, I got into being able to diet and prep my own competitors. And still, like, I love this more than anything else. I love having the opportunity to help people reach their peak physique, or for transformations to reach like optimal health. And there's nothing in the world that I would rather be doing. I Through this time, I'm still training myself. I'm still competing. I did do a run in like 2017, 2018. I did 14 shows in 12 months. Took a little bit of a break after that. And then when I started prepping again, after I think I took 6 months, maybe close to a year off after that long run, I started dieting and doing the things that I would normally do to get ready for a competition. And my body was just like, it was holding on. It was stubborn. I kept pushing back dates and pushing back dates because I was just not seeing the progress. And during this time, I didn't feel well, like not myself. Like my body and my brain felt very foggy. And for a long time, I chalked it up to like, oh, that's just contest prep, right? Like this is just what happens when you're dieting and you're pushing yourself and you're exerting yourself every day. But it kept getting worse. And I would have these weird things where I would like, my weight would be, on a downward trend. And then a day later, it would spike up by like 5, 6, 9 pounds sometimes. It's like, okay, something's not right. I went to 3 different doctors to explain my symptoms, what I was struggling with. And these first 3 doctors told me, oh, it's just depression. It happens. Everybody gets depressed. Like, maybe we try introducing some antidepressants or some anxiety medication. It's like, yeah, like I'm an anxious person for sure, but I'm not a depressed person. That's not what's wrong. And nobody would hear me on it. And I was finally referred to another doctor, an endocrinologist actually, who, after explaining my symptoms, did do a deeper dive into my blood work. Now, of course, these first doctors, they did blood work and everything came back and it's normal. Hormones are normal. Thyroid is normal. Everything looks normal. And that's, when doctors are like, here, just, take these antidepressants and you'll feel better. Um, I'm glad that I didn't do that because after seeing this fourth doctor and explaining my symptoms and what was happening and just the lack of response, the weird weight fluctuations, the constant lethargy, like I could sleep for 12 hours and still be tired. And this doctor finally did a deeper dive, ran an ANA antibodies test, and came back with a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune that impacts your thyroid. So essentially, my body stopped making its own thyroid hormones. And this is something that immediately, I was put on thyroid medication to help bring up my levels and get to a place where I was feeling more myself. I was feeling better. It did come with some dietary changes as well. Not anything significantly different than I'm used to doing. It was more like, the Armour thyroid, that thyroid support, I think that really made a difference initially. And mm, I was back on track where I feel like myself again. My body is responding again. But I was like, man, it's so frustrating to me that so many doctors, they wanted to throw antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications or whatever, these prescription pills at me that essentially they're telling me I'm just going to have to take the rest of my life to feel like a normal person. That's it was infuriating to me, right? So that led me to started with doing like my own research and taking a deeper dive into more holistic health, being able to correct things or feel better from treating the root cause. Now, I did a lot of research on Hashimoto's in particular to start, because I wanted to learn how to not be on medication for the rest of my life. Like whether it be, hormone support or thyroid support, I was like, I don't want to be on that forever. I don't want to be a part of that medical complex for my entire life. And did just deep diving to learn how to address the root cause and how to apply this information to myself. And that stems into, well, okay, now what about this autoimmune and what about this? And how can I make people better here? And it did lead me to, an opportunity where I've been so fortunate where I've met amazing doctors in Las Vegas. I met an amazing functional health practitioner who gave me the resources to learn more in a more directed manner, right? Instead of like just me doing my own spiral research, like now directing my energy to a place where I will be able to start my own functional health training and coaching to be able to address things and learn how to correct them through nutrition, through activity, through better lifestyle choices. And I'm completely grateful for that because it did change my life. I'm now at a place where I'm not using any of my HRT or my thyroid support or anything like that. But now being able to help other people experience that same thing or to learn how to, correct these things on their own. So we're not constantly on medication, or I'm excited to continue my education in it. And all of it it leads me back to everything that's happened to me over the last 15, 16 years of my life, from, ovarian cancer to partying and, almost tearing my calf muscle off, to a DUI, to autoimmune. Like in hindsight, every single one of these things has led me to what I'm able to do now, and to be able to empathize and help other people who maybe are experiencing something similar, who maybe just, maybe they start and they just want to feel better in their clothes, or help moms try to figure out how to prioritize their health while raising children, or help athletes learn how to prioritize their health when coming out of a competition, or helping people to address autoimmune or gut issues from a more holistic standpoint. And that's something I'm by no means done with. There's a lot to learn, but it all just comes back to, if these things hadn't have happened, if I hadn't have, if I hadn't have had cancer, that wouldn't have led me into binge drinking and partying every single night. And if I hadn't been doing that, I wouldn't have hurt myself. I wouldn't have ended up unconscious in the hospital with no recollection of how I got there or what had happened. And if I wouldn't have got a DUI, I wouldn't have quit drinking completely. And if I wouldn't have complete drinking completely, I wouldn't have learned, how much I love health and fitness, and everything. Just like, when I look back, everything, one thing after another, has not only led me to who I am, but to be able to help and support the people that I do now.
Tell me about your mom and your daughter.
It's a super cool story. So, my mom has been an athlete for a long time. Not her entire life by any means, but she was an endurance athlete. She did triathlons. She actually did her first, what they call it, junior Ironman for her 50th birthday, 50th or 55th, sometime in there. And when I got really into bodybuilding, she was like, well, that's pretty cool. I think I want to be a bodybuilder now. So she got into it actually before my daughter did. And my daughter was very on this, she'd come to the gym with me once in a while, she'd work out, but really had no interest in bodybuilding until we moved to Las Vegas, and she got to be around the community and around these amazing athletes, and she's like, oh, I want to be a bodybuilder too. So after she turned 18, we picked a show, which was the very first high roller in Las Vegas that's produced by Mark Anthony and Jen Dory. It's an amazing show. If anybody has the opportunity to do it, highly recommend, where we all compete together. So my mom and my daughter are both competing in bikini, and at that point in time, I compete in women's physique, but I did prep them both into that show. And since then, my daughter has done one other show. Actually, my mom just did she did 2 figure shows before the high roller, and then competes as a bikini athlete for the first time at the high roller, and then recently did one here in Las Vegas for her second bikini competition.